The gentle strains of a string quartet drifted through the ballroom as I adjusted the simple navy dress I'd chosen for Emma's wedding. Nothing ostentatious, just understated so as not to steal the spotlight from the bride. That had always been my approach. Blend into the background, let others shine, keep my head down and focus on my work. Near the champagne fountain, my father, Robert Hartley, stood tall in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, surrounded by a group of business associates. At 58, he commanded attention in every room he entered. As Senior Vice President of Operations at Meridian Industries, the city's largest manufacturing conglomerate, he had built his reputation on decisive leadership and a steadfast belief in traditional success metrics. I watched him gesturing animatedly, likely recounting last quarter's record profits for the 100th time that evening. Beside him, my mother, Patricia, dressed in a designer gown, nodded politely at the conversation, her eyes scanning the room for more influential connections. My brother Marcus, champagne flute in hand, approached with Christina clinging to his arm like an expensive accessory. At 35, Marcus embodied the life our parents had envisioned. Harvard MBA, vice president at Goldman Sachs, a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, and a wife from a wealthy Martha's Vineyard family. "Alex," he said using the nickname he knew I despised. "Surprised you made it. Thought you'd be busy with your little computer project." I took a slow sip of wine, letting his comment roll off me. Wouldn't miss Emma's big day. Christina's laugh tinkled like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Marcus told me you're working on something with technology. That interesting? Is it profitable?" Before I could reply, my sister Victoria joined us, her presence commanding attention. At 32, Victoria was the other golden child. Successful real estate attorney, married to a surgeon, with 2 perfect children enrolled in the city's most prestigious private schools. She looked at me with her familiar condescension. "Are we talking about Alex's hobby?" she asked. "Mom mentioned you're still living in that tiny downtown apartment. When are you going to settle down and find a real career?" I'd heard these questions for 8 years, ever since I'd turned down a coveted consulting role at McKinsey, an opportunity arranged through Dad's connections, choosing instead to pursue a doctorate in quantum computing. What they didn't know was that my project had revolutionized quantum error correction, leading to breakthroughs that could transform the world. 3 months ago, I'd appeared on the cover of Forbes as one of the 30 under 30 visionaries reshaping technology. My startup, Quantum Dynamics, had just received a $2.8 billion acquisition offer from Microsoft. But I'd learned long ago that revealing my accomplishments too early only invited scrutiny, pressure, and attempts to control my decisions. So I simply replied, "I'm doing well." Marcus scoffed. "Living paycheck to paycheck in a studio isn't exactly what most would call success." I corrected him softly, "Alexandra, actually," but I knew he'd ignore it. Our conversation was interrupted by Dad's booming voice from across the room, as he approached with a distinguished older man I recognized from Business Magazine, Jonathan Petton, CEO of Meridian Industries. Dad's ultimate boss, the man who controlled his career trajectory. "Jonathan," Dad said, placing a hand on my shoulder with a forced warmth, "I'd like you to meet my youngest daughter, Alexandra." There was a pause and I felt the familiar weight of disappointment. My so-called disappointing daughter. "She works in some tech thing." The words stung as they always did, a small practiced pain. I maintained my smile and extended my hand. "Pleasure to meet you, sir." Mr. Petton studied my face intently as if trying to place a memory. His eyes narrowed, then widened suddenly. "Wait," he said, pulling out his phone and scrolling through what looked like a magazine app. "Aren't you? Isn't this the quantum computing genius from this month's Forbes?" He held up his phone, displaying the cover. A professional headshot of me against a backdrop of quantum equations with the headline, "Alexandra Hartley, the 28-year-old who solved quantum computing's biggest problem." The room fell into stunned silence. Marcus's champagne flute froze halfway to his lips. Victoria's mouth parted in shock. Christina's grip on Marcus's arm tightened as if needing support. Dad stared at the phone in disbelief, then at me, then back at the screen. "That's impossible," he finally managed, voice strained. "Dr. Alexandra Hartley, CEO and founder of Quantum Dynamics, developed the breakthrough quantum error correction algorithm. That's being called the most significant advancement in computing since the microprocessor." His eyes widened with awe. "You're the one who solved the coherence problem?" I nodded. Among other things, I said quietly. Jonathan looked at Dad with a mixture of amazement and curiosity. Robert, do you realize what your daughter has accomplished? Her work is set to revolutionize everything, from drug discovery to financial modeling, artificial intelligence. Every major tech company is trying to license her technology. Marcus found his voice first. Alexandra, you never mentioned being this successful. I hesitated, then replied gently, you never asked. You just assumed. Victoria, ever the lawyer, stepped forward. The Forbes article. When was this published? 3 weeks ago, Jonathan answered. The same week Microsoft announced they were acquiring Quantum Dynamics. He scrolled through the article. $2.8 billion. Christina made a small choking sound and Dad's face drained of color. But you live in that small apartment, Mom said suddenly, appearing at Dad's side, having overheard. You drive that old Honda. I live modestly by choice, I replied. The apartment is actually a penthouse, but I prefer simplicity. The Honda is reliable. I don't need material possessions to prove my worth. Jonathan kept scrolling through his phone. Listen to this, he said, beginning to read. Dr. Hartley's groundbreaking work was conducted in near total secrecy, as she preferred to let her research speak for itself rather than seek publicity. Despite numerous offers, she chose to build her own company, maintaining full control over her innovations and their applications. He looked up at Dad with genuine admiration. Robert, your daughter is one of the most important scientists of our generation. The technology she'd created had the potential to address climate change, revolutionize medicine, and transform global communications. The weight of that statement hung in the air, thick and palpable. Then he paused, his voice deliberate. And you introduced her as your disappointing daughter. The words drifted like smoke, swirling around us, and the tension was suddenly tangible. Other wedding guests had begun to notice the quiet storm brewing. I caught sight of Emma across the room, radiant in her wedding dress, watching us with curiosity and confusion. Dad's lips parted, then pressed together again as if weighing whether to speak. I spoke softly, feeling the quiet resolve in my voice. We didn't know because you never asked, I said. You decided 8 years ago that because I didn't follow your predetermined path I was a failure. You never considered that I might be building something bigger than what you could see. Marcus set his champagne glass down with trembling hands. The consulting job at Mackenzie, he said quietly, voice almost a whisper. You turned it down for this. I nodded. As I had bigger plans. Plans that needed the freedom to think, to experiment, to fail, and to try again without corporate oversight or family pressure. Victoria's eyes flickered with calculation, her gaze sharp. The acquisition, $2.8 billion, she said softly. What's your percentage of the company? I offered a small, knowing smile. I retained 73% ownership when I brought in investors 2 years ago. The deal values my stake at roughly $2.04 billion. The impact hit them like a punch to the stomach. Christina swayed slightly, visibly shaken. Marcus grabbed the nearest chair for support. $2 billion, Dad whispered, voice trembling. You're worth $2 billion? On paper, yes, I replied quietly. But wealth was never my goal. My aim was to solve problems that matter, push the boundaries of human knowledge, build technology that helps people. Jonathan Petton, the CEO of Meridian Industries, was studying Dad with an unreadable expression. I sensed he was processing something much deeper. Robert, Jonathan finally asked, voice steady, how does it feel to know that your disappointing daughter has become one of the youngest billionaires in the country? The question cut sharply, and I watched Dad process not only the shock of my success but the implications it carried for his career. Jonathan, his boss, had just witnessed Dad publicly dismiss and belittle someone who was now arguably more successful than anyone in the room. I'm proud, Dad managed, though his words sounded hollow. Are you? I pressed softly. Because 3 hours ago, you were telling Aunt Margaret that you wished I'd found a husband by now, since I apparently couldn't support myself. Dad flinched visibly. Victoria looked mortified, and Marcus was still staring at me as if I'd suddenly grown a second head. Alexandra, Mom broke in, her voice smooth and diplomatic, we've always been proud of you. We just didn't understand. I cut her off gently. You didn't try to understand because you never wanted to. Every time I tried to explain my work, you changed the subject or told me I was wasting my time. family gatherings turned into interventions about my life choices. Jonathan watched the exchange with fascination. "Dr. Hartley," he asked, "what's next for you?" The Forbes article mentioned the Microsoft acquisition includes provisions for you to continue your research. I nodded. "I'll be heading Microsoft's new quantum research division. We're working on applications that could revolutionize cybersecurity, medical diagnostics, and more. Plus, I'm establishing a foundation to support underrepresented scientists." Jonathan murmured, "Extraordinary." Turning back to Dad, he added, "Robert, I hope you realize what an incredible daughter you have. Her work is going to change the world." Just then the wedding coordinator's voice rang out, calling everyone's attention for the cake cutting. As the crowd moved toward the main reception area, Jonathan lingered. "Dr. Hartley," he said softly, "I'd love to discuss potential collaborations between quantum dynamics and Meridian Industries. We're always looking for ways to incorporate cutting-edge technology into our manufacturing processes." "I'd be happy to explore that," I replied, "though you'll want to coordinate with Microsoft's partnership team once the deal closes." He handed me his business card. "Here's mine. And I'll expect a full briefing on this at our next board meeting. I want to see how Meridian can benefit from these quantum advances." As Jonathan walked away, my family stood in stunned silence. The background noise of the reception persisted, but in our small corner time seemed to pause. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "Alex, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me?" I shrugged. "Or would you have assumed I was exaggerating, like when I tried to explain quantum entanglement at Christmas dinner, and Dad told me to stop showing off?" Victoria, ever the lawyer, was already calculating the tax implications of the acquisition. "Do you have proper legal representation?" she asked. I almost smiled. "I have a team of attorneys handling patent law, corporate structuring, international licensing. Everything's covered." Mom chimed in, "Family should help family. Family should support family," I corrected gently. "You wanted to help by fixing what you saw as my failures. I needed support to pursue what I knew was possible." Dad had been silent until now. Stepping forward, he looked at me with genuine remorse. "Alexandra, we made mistakes. I made mistakes. Can we start over?" I studied him, seeing that rare sincerity. "Dad, I never wanted to shut you out. I wanted you to trust that I knew what I was doing, even when it didn't look like conventional success. The apartment, the car, you let us believe you were struggling financially. I let you reveal your true feelings about my choices. If you'd only been proud of me once you saw I was wealthy, what would that say about your values?" That truth hung heavily between us, unspoken but undeniable. Mom looked stricken, her face a mixture of concern and regret. Marcus was still trying to process the magnitude of what I'd achieved, his mind racing with the implications. "So what happens now?" Victoria asked softly. "Now," I said, "we go watch Emma cut her cake and celebrate her happiness. Tomorrow, I have a board meeting with Microsoft to finalize the acquisition timeline. Next week, I'm giving a keynote at MIT about quantum error correction. And next month, I'll be testifying before Congress on the national security implications of quantum computing." I paused, locking eyes with each of them. "You're welcome to be part of that life, but only if you can accept that my definition of success might be different from yours." Across the room, Jonathan Petton's voice carried through the reception hall as he spoke to another group of business leaders. I caught fragments: revolutionary technology, brilliant young scientist, proud father. Dad heard it too. His shoulders straightened just slightly. And for the first time in years, I saw something other than disappointment flicker in his eyes when he looked at me. "I want to understand," he said quietly. "Your work, your research. I want to learn about what you've built." "Then ask me questions," I replied. "Real questions, not assumptions about what I should be doing differently." Marcus cleared his throat. "The quantum error correction thing. Can you explain it in a way a finance guy might understand?" For the first time in 8 years, my brother was genuinely curious about my work instead of condescending. That was a start. As we moved toward the main reception area, Mom slipped her arm through mine. "Alexandra," she asked softly, "are you happy?" "Really happy." I paused to consider. "Mom, I'm exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do." She smiled for the first time that evening, and I sensed it was genuine. "Then I'm proud of you," she said. The rest of the night blurred into a swirl of congratulations from relatives who'd suddenly remembered I existed, business cards exchanged with colleagues eager to explore opportunities, and heartfelt conversations with family who finally saw me for who I truly was. But the moment that mattered most came near the end of the evening. Dad pulled me aside during a quiet song, his expression serious and open. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "Not just for tonight but for years, for not seeing what was right in front of me." "I know," I replied simply. "How do I make it right?" I recalled all those dinners where I tried to share my breakthroughs, only to be told I was getting too technical. The times they suggested I'd wasted my education. The countless conversations that started with, "When are you going to get a real job?" All of it. "Start by believing in me," I said softly. "Even when you don't understand what I'm doing, especially then." He nodded slowly. "Deal." As the evening wound down and guests began leaving, Jonathan Petton approached me one more time. "Dr. Hartley," he said, lowering his voice, "this has been the most interesting wedding I've attended. Your father is a lucky man whether he realizes it or not." "Thank you, Mr. Petton," I replied. He paused, then added, "One more thing. I meant what I said about collaboration opportunities. Meridian Industries is always looking to stay ahead of technological curves. Perhaps we could schedule a formal meeting." "I'd be happy to explore that," I said. "My assistant will reach out next week." He handed me his card. "And I'll expect a full briefing at our next board meeting. I want to understand how Meridian can benefit from these quantum advances." As he walked away, Dad appeared beside me, his expression filled with a mixture of awe and newfound respect. "That was Jonathan Petton showing serious interest in working with your company," he said softly. "I think I've seriously underestimated you." "Just beginning," I teased, and he chuckled, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in years. The ride home was quiet but different from usual. Instead of the familiar tension of unmet expectations and disappointment, there was a sense of possibility, a new chapter opening. My phone buzzed with messages. "Marcus, can we have lunch this week? I want to hear more about your work. Really hear it, not just pretend." "Victoria, I looked up your Forbes article. Quantum computing could impact legal research. Let's discuss." And finally, Mom, "I'm sorry it took so long for us to see you. Really see you. Love, Mom." I smiled as I gazed out the window, watching the city lights flicker past. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in my penthouse apartment and continue the work that had always driven me. But for the first time in 8 years, I wouldn't be doing it alone. Dismissed by the people who were supposed to support me unconditionally. Sometimes the best way to prove people wrong isn't by showing them what you can do. It's by giving them the chance to be proud of who you really are, instead of disappointed in who they thought you should be. The Forbes cover story was just the beginning. The real revolution was happening right here. One conversation at a time, one genuine question at a time, one moment of true understanding. My family was finally ready to meet the person I'd always been. And I was ready to let them.